Hi, I'm Lisa Hayes with Dreams for Society at dreamsforsociety.com, where we interview politicians, civic leaders, researchers, and spiritual leaders about their public service to society and also what they imagine, visualize, and create as dreams for society. Today, which is Thursday, September 29, 2016, we have a wonderful guest with us, Dr. Michael Salla. Dr. Salla is an international recognized scholar in international politics, conflict resolution, and U.S. foreign policy. He is a pioneer in the development of exopolitics, which is the political study of key actors, institutions, and processes associated with extraterrestrial life. He has appeared in hundreds of radio and television shows and international conferences for his research on UFOs, secret space programs, and human rights issues. Dr. Salla is the author of 5 books. His latest book, entitled Insiders Reveal Secret Space Programs and Extraterrestrial Alliances, has helped immensely with revealing society's secrets and getting us closer to full disclosure. You can learn more about Dr. Salla at exopolitics.org. And with that, thank you so much for being with us today, Dr. Salla. And to start us out, you know that our template here for Dreams for Society is imagine, visualize, and create dreams for society. So if you can imagine and visualize something wonderful for us that is possible in the future based on all the research you've done, what would it be? And how could we create it?
Well, thanks, Lisa, for having me on the show. I really feel that we are on the verge of a new world of open contact with extraterrestrial life. And what I envisage, actually, right behind me, you can see a reflection of the ocean. And really, in that reflection lies the Hawaii Star Visitor Sanctuary, which is a place that was built in collaboration with a number of the Hawaiian elders, the kahuna, and I was involved in that. And what we did was we basically had some land dedicated to open contact with extraterrestrials. And I think that, to me, is really a wonderful way of envisaging the future, where we have these advanced extraterrestrial societies coming in and meeting us, where we are in full collaboration with the indigenous wisdom of the elders and those that have preceded us. So that, with that wisdom and everything that we bring in as a modern society, I think then we are going to be ready for open contact.
Oh, wow. And right in your backyard. That's amazing.
It literally is.
That's amazing. Yeah, and you were telling me the lava is coming down into the ocean, and I can't see it very well on the screen, but it's amazing. That segues into a question I was going to ask you. The elders, like the Mayans, for example, maybe some of the Inner Earth people in the Agartha network. Could you expand on that? I know you've had a lot of interesting discussions with people in the past, and even a book on galactic diplomacy, which I would assume would apply to the Agartha network people as well. Can you talk with us a little bit about how that can help with the future for not just us beings on Earth, but in the galactic realms as well?
Oh, definitely. I think that's a big part of our preparation to reestablish contact with the inner Earth peoples. And as I've been doing this research on secret space programs, I've discovered that there has been extensive contact with inner Earth civilizations, that there have been meetings, there have been negotiations at an kind of official and semi-official level with the inner Earth beings. And they have kind of periodically over the centuries, I guess, been kind of making contact with private individuals. But I think in terms of our society, our entire world going towards open contact with extraterrestrials, that the inner Earth beings are going to be a big part of that they will come forward and help us. And that's actually what's been said in these meetings that have been occurring at a kind of semi-official level with these inner Earth civilizations. And when we look at the elders, the indigenous communities around the world, they are obviously going to be a part of that because they are the ones that have had kept up the traditions, their culture, honouring the land, and I think they're the ones that are going to be a really good bridge as we kind of interface with the inner Earth civilizations, who will then really help us facilitate that contact with the galactics.
That's fantastic. Do we need to do something on Earth in terms of increasing our frequency in order to interact with them?
The best way of interacting or preparing for open contact and raising our frequency is to really just be in nature, to really spend as much time as you can in nature, whether it's in forests, mountains, open desert, or oceans, if you live in a place like Hawaii. But I think that's really the best way of raising the vibration, because the planet itself, nature itself, carries the vibration of where we as a species are heading to. So we really don't need to do anything too fancy, like, do really intensive meditations and workshops in that regard. You can do that too. But if you just spend, every day a little bit of quiet time in nature and just kind of like resonate with that, and just kind of carry that with you as much as you can, I think that's really all the preparation you need to do.
What an awesome way and such an easy way to just step into a space that resonates in a higher frequency already. And if we go in there, we'll resonate with that frequency. I mean, that makes sense to me. Rather than going into a war zone where you're going to lower your frequency, why not go into the law of nature, which has a higher frequency, is what I'm hearing you saying. And what better place than to be in Hawaii? How awesome. What do you feel the differences are between those that live in Hawaii and those that live maybe in the hustle and bustle of a big city like New York City or Los Angeles?
Yeah, well, those that live in the big cities, I mean, they are really facing a very difficult time because, they are in a dense kind of urban environment, and they don't get the kind of opportunities we have, people who live in more rural areas to go, to the oceans or go to the mountains or the forests or the desert, high desert or whatever, and just kind of commune with nature, because that's really what it's about. Being able to commune with nature, for people that live in those urban environments, it's definitely a struggle to maintain that high vibration. Then maybe it's a matter of just being able to kind of like work through your issues as you interact with people, to kind of like, because it's in your face. In nature, you don't get that as much. In nature, you're, in that beautiful environment and you're able to commune and there's lots of space. But in an urban environment, you're pretty close up to a lot of people, and it makes you confront yourself, who you are. And if you're getting into a place of anger, frustration, there's an opportunity there to just kind of like, deal with those issues and, practice forgiveness, compassion, get into that place. But yeah, definitely those urban environments, it's much more challenging.
I heard you in an interview once say that we really need to get into the modality of truth, mercy, justice, and forgiveness. And even as all these things are revealed to us and what you write about in terms of disclosing these revelations through the whistleblowers like Cory Good and others, that we must, as an individual and a collective, have compassion because they're victims as well, and not and not feel negatively, because we're here to feel positively, I guess is what you're saying. And when we go into nature, we feel positively. If we're wallowing in the negativity by complaining or judging the evildoers, who, as you've so eloquently stated, are victims in and of themselves. I mean, I guess what I'm hearing you say is, if we're going to be able to have galactic diplomacy and convene with our inner Agarthan beings that have a higher frequency, it's incumbent upon us to raise our frequency. And if it's as simple as getting into nature, then great. If we know our frequency is lowered if we're listening to the nightly news, then let's not do it, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Watch Gaia TV or something.
So you've done a lot of research, and your latest book is about a lot about what Cory Good has revealed. Could you describe a little bit about Cory Good, who he is, and what you've learned from him, and especially in his latest discussion, or the big discussion about the avians and the need to be 51% or more service to others?
Sure. Well, Corey is unique in the sense that he is both a secret space program whistleblower, that is someone who's been a part of one of these 20 and back programs where they serve and then they're sent back and age regressed and had their memories wiped and kind of relived that 20 years as private civilians. And, some of them, they go through a process of recovering their memories and then revealing. So he's done that, but the other aspect of Corey is that he's also a contactee with a group of extraterrestrials who say that they are sixth to ninth density and highly evolved consciousness, and that they are here to kind of help humanity collectively prepare for an ascension event, for a kind of harvest event, as is described in the Law of One material. And so Corey has been appointed by them to be their delegate, which basically means that he goes to these different meetings between different secret space program councils, different extraterrestrial alliances. He goes to those meetings, and he's there. While he's a delegate for the Sphere Being Alliance, I mean, he's also an ordinary human, and so he kind of carries out interests. So it's almost like a very clever way for this Sphere Being Alliance to kind of level the playing field, so that we who collectively never are really considered to have a voice of our own. Those in the secret space programs or in the Illuminati, the Cabal, or the different extraterrestrial groups, they have their own interests, and they kind of see us as a commodity, really. I mean, that's all we are to them, a commodity, either to be traded or to be protected, depending on their kind of value set. But, Cory Good, because he's been appointed to this role as a delegate, he kind of makes us more than just a commodity, because now we have a voice in these negotiations that are ongoing. So it's a very important role that he's playing. And, why him? Why was he chosen to play that role? Well, in a way, he's a very typical person. He's not someone that you would consider to be a person that would be kind of an ambassador for humanity. But nevertheless, because of his kind of very down-to-earth qualities, very gentle nature, very sensitive, very thoughtful person, he's been given this role to play, which I think as the future unfolds will be recognized by more and more people as really being a very, very important transformative role for our whole world.
He has had a significant role, it seems, within the alternative media community for sure. What are your thoughts about all of these whistleblowers' experiences? Do you think that there's a possibility that some of the things, for example, Cory Good talks about the smart pad or the glass pad that he studied quite a bit in his years of service in the secret space program? I think it was Solar Warden, right?
That's right,
Solar.
yes.
And what if some of that maybe isn't really the truth, that the people that put it in there thought it was the truth, or maybe they didn't even think it was the truth, that they wanted later to see whistleblowers spread what isn't really the truth. And maybe that doesn't even matter, because the truth is, in my opinion, that we're all equally powerful creative beings. And as long as we're feeling joyful, we're going to create joy. So I love it that we're all, I'm a curious cat too, an intellectual curious cat. I love to find out everything that everybody else believes in. But where does the discovery and discernment, the ability to discern, even though we can tell someone is telling what's true to them, or they really believe in it, where is our ability to discern that maybe what they were fed is not necessarily the truth. I mean, is there anything you want to say about that? Because we're all individually
Well,
able to do that, right? Discern the truth.
right.
Mhm.
Yes, it's a very challenging thing normally to do that, to discern, especially when it comes to these secret space program whistleblowers who said that they've been part of these programs and then, been brought back and had their memories wiped and they've recovered their memories. Or in Cory's case, he says, he kept the bulk of his memories, but there's no kind of physical evidence because he's had to live that 20 years again. So, is it something that really happened, or is it some kind of elaborate dream, or is it some kind of implanted memories that he has? These are all questions that people might legitimately raise. One of the people that I've recently begun working with is this 93-year-old individual by the name of William Tompkins, who actually was working for the US Navy during the Second World War and actually was part of the process in terms of preparing briefing documents that ultimately appear on these smart glass pads. So, there we have a really fortuitous development, because now, not only do we have Cory Good's word for it that, okay, there are these documents on these smart glass pads saying all of this stuff about our history and the different space programs, but we actually have the person who was directly involved in the preparing the briefing packets that actually appear on these smart glass pads that Cory Good, decades later got to see when he was in the secret space program. So I've been doing quite a lot of work in validating the testimony of William Tompkins, because he's got a lot of documents, and, there's a paper trail with William because he's worked with so many aerospace companies and he names people, and so these people have paper trails. So, for example, at the moment, I got a big Freedom of Information Act release of 1,500 pages of this Admiral Bolter, who was running this Navy program out of San Diego. And so just in the next day or two, I'll be releasing an article where I actually release some of these documents which substantiate what Tompkins says. And in substantiating what Tompkins says, then that substantiates to a large degree what Cory Good is saying. So, thankfully, definitely we have to rely on our discernment and what we intuit to be true and honest. But with the Cory Good information, we have a mechanism now whereby we can actually validate it using the more traditional documentary authentication process. So that's very exciting, because I think that's going to make this whole secret space program genre something that kind of breaks out of the traditional UFO extraterrestrial kind of niche into something that academics and professionals start to embrace. Say, oh wow, these documents are very real, so this stuff really did happen.
I think you have a huge role in all this disclosure, Michael, because you have such a calm demeanor and you have a very high frequency way of dealing with it. And as people discover or have these, what's happening in this realm, what's happening in terms of behind the scenes, that the secrets that weren't revealed to us in the past and now are corroborated, as you said, by several different evidential documents, so that it becomes pretty self-evident that these things are true to people, or they feel that it must have happened, and it's hard for them to digest that. But they can look to you. Well, you've been researching this for years and you haven't imploded. You're still able to digest it and integrate it, and yet still have compassion for others. So I really love the fact that you're a template for that, because instead of being angry, you seem to be becoming more. You're becoming more compassionate for what we would consider to be the people that have chosen maybe a negative path.
Well, thank you, Lisa. Yes, well, I mean, I do realize that those that are in positions of authority, they really had difficult choices to make. And while if I was in their place, would have made very different choices, I have to honour the fact that, I wasn't in their place and that they were. And for better or worse, they had that authority to make those decisions. And while, some of those decisions, we can look back on that and say, well, you made these agreements with this kind of negative group of extraterrestrials, and that led to a lot of these kind of injustices, then we can have compassion for them, because, they can turn around and say, well, we were in an impossible situation because we couldn't tell the public that Nazi Germany had survived the war, that they had a space program in Antarctica with advanced flying saucers with more advanced weapons than we had, and that they were flying over our capitals, and we couldn't do a thing about it. We couldn't tell the population that. What we had to do was to try to kind of, make agreements with groups that we thought could help us technologically, so that we could eventually level the playing field and then kind of like regain our sovereignty or take our future back from what the Nazis had secretly been able to do in collaboration with certain extraterrestrial groups. So basically it's a very complex situation. And I think it's always important to kind of understand that, it's not a black and white issue. People in leadership positions often feel as though there are forces and events happening around them that propel them to making decisions that, we are frankly horrified at. But, they think that that's really the best decision that they can make.
Yeah, I agree with that. We can't put ourselves in their shoes necessarily because we weren't there. And we certainly have to, I feel, have compassion for them that they made the best decision at the time based on their level of frequency. And so if we go back to this 51% service to others, or maybe even 51% positive feelings, can you imagine, Michael, if collectively or even individually, and maybe you're already there, but I look back at 10 years ago, and I think most of the day I was walking around with negative feelings. And when I say negative, frustrated, a little upset, maybe judgmental with me or others. Positive would be joy, bliss, happiness, peace. So, if we could start with ourselves, peace begins with me, and feel positive feelings most of the time, then I think this galactic diplomacy and working with having service to others will be a piece of cake. And, is that achievable in our lifetime, Michael? Would you be able, do you feel like you're at that space, 51% or more positive feelings?
Definitely. I mean, it's not so much, trying to quantify it in terms of, positive feelings. I think it's more about, what gives you joy in life. Yeah. And if you embrace that and follow that path of what gives you joy, then your life will naturally go down that path of just being much more positive and much more open to what's around you. Like for me, I made a choice. Like 15 years ago, I had a choice as to whether or not I would continue down a traditional academic path, get a salary, but teach things that I knew weren't true, or go down another path where I wouldn't have a salary and struggle to survive economically, but I would be teaching and learning about something that I find stimulating, exciting, earth-opening and changing. And so I chose that path. And I say, even though, it's kind of like living on the bleeding edge, but living on the bleeding edge, when you're joyful because, you're writing or you're researching or you're meeting people that are all part of discovering the truth into something that has been hidden for so long, it's very exciting and it's very joyful. And so, with me, I find that because of those decisions I made, I ended up here in Hawaii, where I met this beautiful person who I married, and I'm living in Hawaii in the beautiful environment here. And I think, my ending up being in Hawaii was because I made that choice. back in 2001, that I would follow that path of what brought me joy. As Joseph Campbell says, follow your bliss. And I think when you follow your bliss, then it's natural to be happy and joyful and positive. Then it's natural to be service to other because you're happy, and so it's easier to help others because you're in that place already. Whereas if you're not in that place and you're doing a job that you hate, then it's hard to be 51% service to other because you hate your life at some level, and that reflects in your interactions with others. So I would say just for everyone, especially now as we're heading towards the next few years, it seems that is going to be a crunch time. I would say everyone just look at your life, evaluate where you are, and say, are you doing the things that bring you joy in life? And if you're not, why not?
Oh, so well stated. And that is the key. It's being authentic with ourselves and loving ourselves. And if we're telling lies in our job or committing crimes in our job, how can we love ourselves? Going to a job that is in a space that's not joyful is totally the antithesis of what you were saying at the beginning of the show, where go into nature, because nature is automatically a high frequency. But if we go inside a tall building cage, stay there from dark to dark, we leave our homes in the dark and we come home in the dark, and we're told what to do all day long. And it's difficult, it's challenging to be joyful in that situation. So I hear what you're saying, and I think your advice is, we can be brave and courageous and walk away from that misery into a space that's joyful, even though right now it may not look like it's going to give us a lot of money, because money and time does control us, right? That's one of the big controllers on this plane is money and time. If we don't have enough money, we don't have enough time. If we don't have enough time, we don't have enough money. And some people work their lives to get a second home, a vacation home on a lake, let's say, and they spend 99% of their time working to get that vacation home and that boat, just to get the 1% of bliss out on the water. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Right.
Where
exactly.
you've got bliss all the time, it sounds like, most of the time. So one point I want to make then, as people read your books and read your articles about all these revelations that seem to be negative in a lot of ways, again, what is your advice as they're reading it, instead of getting all charged up, to introspectively look inwardly and say, what am I feeling right now? And then shift to compassion at the minimum? I mean, what would be your advice on that?
Well, I think it's just have joy in finding the truth of what the big picture is, because for me, it's always been like a big jigsaw puzzle, what is really going on around us. Yeah. And it's like a jigsaw puzzle, and, there are different fragments here and there, and people talk about different aspects of it. But what I've always taken joy and delight in is being able to, put together that jigsaw puzzle. And I think we all have within us this joyful capacity to just enjoy solving a jigsaw puzzle. Mm-hmm. It's a joyful thing, especially if it's a good jigsaw puzzle. You could spend hours on a really fun jigsaw puzzle, and it's the same thing when it comes to this field. Even though aspects of it are dark, but it's like, well, it's like, fair enough, that's part of our history. It's like what's going on around us, and as you solve that, you understand the jigsaw puzzle, then there is this part of us that takes delight in the truth. And I've always taken delight in finding the truth, even when it is a kind of dark thing. I know people often say, well, don't get into dark things, that, like attracts like, and if you're in, but I think, being aware of the truth doesn't mean you're going to attract these dark things into your life. You're just understanding it so that you can develop better discernment, so that you can make choices in terms of how to help yourself and help others. And I certainly feel that with my books, I'm just revealing the truth that as I found it, what is the big jigsaw puzzle when it comes to these topics, extraterrestrial life, secret space programs, UFOs and so forth. And that, for people that are searching for the truth in that regard, that it's going to help them, and maybe they'll kind of get a lot of joy and satisfaction in solving the big jigsaw puzzle.
I love that metaphor. And also, if our head's in the sand, we'll never know that our neighbor killed somebody, and we'll never be able to get to the step to have compassion for them. And obviously, if we find out our neighbor killed somebody, we might be angry with our neighbor and want to move. That's the reaction, right? The reaction in fear. We'll never get to the step of reacting with love and having compassion if we don't find out the truth first. So there is joy in finding out the truth, because the end game here is to have joy for everything, every creation, whether it's negative or positive, in a sense. I mean, I hear that's...
Yeah, I agree, definitely.
Well, that's mainly what I wanted to, kind of go over today, and getting back to the first question before we sign off here. What, after all this research, I have two questions. One is, what is the most significant revelation, if you can even name one, that you have discovered to date? And then the other one I'm going to broach again is, what do you think society is going to look like in 10 years? And is it possible to create this utopia within our lifetimes? But let's get to the first one. Do you have a significant revelation over all these years that you could put your finger on as maybe one of the biggest reveals that shifted your thinking and your outlook?
Right. Well, I think the thing that has given me the biggest charge over the years, I mean, there have been many, but the ones that have really kind of like resonated with me, when I first found out about the galactic negotiations that were being conducted in secret. When I found out about President Eisenhower going to Edwards Air Force Base and having negotiations with different extraterrestrial civilizations, and the same thing happening a year later at Holloman Air Force Base. That I remember that really energized me at the time. That was like so astounding to me, because that's a field I've worked in, and something I'm very passionate about is kind of like citizen diplomacy, international diplomacy. I've taught courses in international diplomacy. So, that's what gave me the biggest charge, that, that we, incredible, fancy that we are actually having diplomatic meetings with representatives of extraterrestrial civilizations. And then I found out more recently through Cory Good that, it's kind of up the ante now, that there are these secret space programs that have their own kind of representative groups that are having negotiations not only with extraterrestrial civilizations, but also with leaders of different planetary groups. So it's like, so now there's another level of negotiation that's happening. Cory Good is giving us kind of, literally live updates. As he goes up and has these encounters, he comes back and reports about them. And so, we're getting these live updates. So to me, that's been the biggest charge I've gotten over the years, that, these diplomatic this galactic diplomacy is very real, and it's happening right now.
Well, if you were to go back to your puzzle metaphor, how many pieces of the puzzle are left before we have full disclosure? Or even if that is, do you think that will happen, full disclosure? Or what do you think, what do you foresee?
Well, what I see is, like, if you can imagine 1,000-word jigsaw, or 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, something really big and complex. And at some point you have formed the edges of that jigsaw puzzle, that you've been able to piece together all the edges. So now you have the frame, and everything else is in that frame. So I think we're kind of like at that point, with the testimony of these different whistleblowers, that now we have a good idea of what the frame is, what the big picture is. Now it's just a matter of putting together all the bits inside. But, as you know, in doing a jigsaw puzzle, once you've worked out the edges, it's just a matter of time before you work out everything else. And that's where I think we're going now. We're kind of like going in and just filling in the pieces inside of this kind of big 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle.
That's awesome that we're that far along. Do you feel then that a better world, something that looks like the Garden of Eden on Earth, maybe that we go back to what we had, is possible within the next 10, 20 years? I mean, what do you think? What's, if you were to go out on a limb and predict?
Oh, what I think is most likely going to happen, just based on, the kind of secret space program negotiations that I've been kind of following through Cory Good and also some others like William Tompkins. I think what we are kind of most likely going to be facing very soon is something like the Gene Roddenberry vision of Star Trek, that kind of future, where we move into a highly advanced technological civilization, where we have replicators and poverty worldwide is resolved, and we kind of like live largely at peace, and it's all about kind of science and exploration. That's kind of like the more positive version of where we can go. Now that there are things in that vision that I think we can definitely improve on. The whole kind of reliance on technology as opposed to being able to depend on our own power of consciousness and creative abilities to be able to do things, because we are all inherently masters of limitation, but also masters of the universe. Right. So if we can kind of change, if we can change ourselves from being masters of limitation into being masters of the universe, then I think, we will surpass anything Gene Roddenberry envisaged as far as Star Trek. But I think it's a kind of two-step process, and hopefully, those things will run together. But, I definitely feel very optimistic for the future, Lisa.
I love that. And masters of the universe rather than masters of limitation. If we realize how much power we have as creators in this realm, and that we're all equally powerful to create with love, that we have a choice to create with love rather than create with fear, and we start to choose to create with love, then this fear of technology, as long as we're creating with love, we don't have to worry about artificial intelligence taking us over. We can organically develop our inner gifts of telepathy, teleportation, and all of that as we create these outer gifts like the replicator. We will then segue into the organic ability to do all of that, rather than succumb to what some are talking about, where we go into a hive mind and give up our ability to choose to create with love. Any final thoughts on that? That would go further into the matrix, as far as I could tell, if we did that, rather than this utopia world of love and joy and bliss.
I think it's very important, Lisa, as you kind of pointed out, that we are facing this kind of issue, this challenge, if you like, of artificial intelligence, and what that means if we go down a path of technological development without developing our spiritual abilities, without developing our consciousness abilities. If we go down that technological path without developing consciousness, then we are definitely going to go into a future that's going to be very, very dangerous and very uncomfortable, the one where we probably will be eventually taken over by AI, because ultimately the only way we as individuals and collectively can protect ourselves from something like AI is to truly become masters of the universe, where each of us individually through our consciousness has the ability to transcend anything technology does, or transcend whatever dependency we have on technology and do it ourselves. No matter what it is technology provides, we have within our conscious abilities the power to do that of its own. And as long as we keep that alive and start developing it. And even while we still have the technology thing, we can still have flying saucers, spaceships, replicators, all of those things. But as long as we understand that we have those abilities inherently within us and develop them, then I think that we still have the ability to maintain our sovereignty and not eventually be taken over by something nefarious like AI.
I agree. And for the viewers here, not to get in fear about what might be happening outside of us that we think we have no power over, that, the collective is going to do something, how are we going to stop that? Well, I think what you're saying, and I feel the same way, is it really gets to the individual. If we as an individual can stay in positive feelings, that will protect us from everything that is in fear and transcends the fear in and of itself. And we don't have to worry about the perceived collective at that point. We just do our own work and stay in love vibration. Any final comments, Michael, before we sign off? And again, I really appreciate your being here. And again, anyone that wants more information about Michael's books or articles or recent interviews can go to his website, exopolitics.org. Michael, any final thoughts for us?
Well, Lisa, I think it's wonderful that we have shows like yours that really tries to bring together people so that we can collectively dream and manifest a future reality. Because I know we can do it individually, but I think it's so much more fun when we do it collectively. And so, I'm so happy to be a part of that, and thank you for all the work that you do in kind of encouraging us and leading us into this collective manifestation of a future dream world.
Oh, Michael, what your words there just gave me this Kundalini rising that I get. So it's just really resonated as the truth. Thank you so much. Aloha, and have a wonderful day.
Mahalo nui loa.
Thank you.